All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Startup Women Industry Advisory Circle for Women in Social Enterprises. I am Miriam Wedge, the program lead for Startup Women and Startup Global here at Startup Canada. To begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that which I'm on today is located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik, and Wabanaki nations. I also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are residing on today. Today's session is being recorded and will be added to our resource guide along with any resources that are shared during today's session. Startup Canada is a national nonprofit that is the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business here in Canada. Since launching in 2012, Startup Canada has grown to support more than 130,000 entrepreneurs annually and an ever-growing community of ecosystem partners from coast to coast to coast. And dedicated to showing up for women all year round, Startup Women is an annual program offering support to early-stage women-identifying entrepreneurs across Canada through some topic-focused webinars, industry advisory circles like today's, and meetings with startup women leaders. We know that when you support women, you support a nation. These monthly industry advisory circles will provide attendees with a deeper understanding of trends and best practices in their sector, and will leave with actionable takeaways and resources that they can implement into their business. We also have just a short message from our co-presenting partner, the Scotiabank Women's Initiative, that my colleague Isabel will play.
The Scotiabank Women Initiative is dedicated to your success on your terms.
I'm shaping our industry's vision for the future.
I can expand my business without borrowing from my family.
I know I can face anything, thanks to my network.
I'm ready for my next chapter.
I'm inspiring future leaders.
I'm making sure my family's future is secure.
Define your success, and we'll help you achieve it. With unbiased access to capital and tailored solutions, bespoke specialized education, and holistic advisory services and mentorship. Join our community of women today, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
Thank you so much. And we'd also like to thank our other co-presenting partner, UPS, our program partners, EDC, Mastercard, and YSpace Ella, and our community of ecosystem partners that we will share a full list into the Zoom chat here. All right, so today's session is for women in social enterprises. We're very excited to dive into the discussion today, but before we do that, we're just going to take some time to walk you through what the next 2 or so hours will look like. So in a moment, I'll invite each of our attendees to do a quick speed introduction of themselves. So we'll take about 15 minutes to do this. You can either do this in the on camera or in the chat. So if you do have your camera on, I will assume that you are comfortable with introducing yourself to the group, and I'll call on you one by one. You can let us know your name, where you're located, and just like a quick sentence or two about your business and what you're looking forward to learning more about in today's session. You can also feel free to add your LinkedIn profiles into the chat and to connect with each other. So I'll see who's on my screen here. I don't think I'm seeing anyone on camera today, unfortunately. If anybody does want to introduce yourselves, please feel free to come on camera. Maybe raise, you can use like the raise hand function. Maybe not.
I can start things off if we want, just so everyone's maybe warm everyone up. Hi, I'm Isabel Nolan. I'm the Director of Programs at Startup Canada. I'll be moderating our panel discussion in a little while, but delighted to see you all here. And I'll echo Miriam's sentiment. And we want this to be conversational for everyone involved, everyone that's here today. And the best way for us to do that is to be on screen and see everyone's faces and be able to connect with each other, even though we are online. I'll pass it back because we've got some people with their screens on.
Awesome. Thank you, Isabel. Yeah, I see Monica first. I'll pass it over to you. Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm just getting over a cold, so that's why I didn't want to come on screen, but I started a marketing agency last year called Nori Marketing, and I've been in the corporate world for over 20 years doing marketing. And I always tell everyone, like the Matrix, I took the red pill and woke up in October to the world of social innovation and enterprise. And I realized that this is where I wanted to be. And I'm really focused in on working with the organizations that are making a really positive impact in the world. Yeah, and I just want to connect with others, see what they're doing, get excited about some of the amazing projects that are happening, and just see how we can support each other.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I apologize. My cat is wanting to join us today as well. Next up, I'm seeing Coach Few. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Sorry.
Hi, ladies. My name is Fuller. I've been in Canada for 7 years now, originally from Cameroon. What I do is very similar to Monique. I support other small and medium-sized enterprises to generate high-quality leads through my Done For You ad services. So I offer a wide range of digital marketing services, but one of the most peculiar thing that I do for clients is market research. So with my data analytics background, I'm looking forward to know more about you and see how we can support each other. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I did see someone with the name Laboratoire Biologique Inc. had their camera on, but I think they'll closed it. So if you are comfortable introducing yourself, please feel free, but you don't have to.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Hiba. I'm the founder of Laboratoire Biologique. It's mainly clinical testing services to support cosmetic formulators achieve regulatory compliance and to prove the safety and efficacy of their products. So we're helping them with consulting services as well as clinical services. And I'll be happy to connect with all of you. On the side, I also do events to create a community and bind people together in Canada. It's mainly like hiking trips and so on. And I also do original music as a part to empower people. So nice to meet you all and thank you for this opportunity.
Nice, that sounds so cool. Mina, you can go ahead.
Hi, I can't turn my camera on, but I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm running the Canadian Women Lawyers Group online on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And the social enterprise work that I'm doing, apart from business development generally, is trying to change the perception of the legal profession to include women so that the default isn't just male lawyers in suits carrying briefcases, but also includes women and racialized women and disabled women and a variety of women. So that's the kind of work that I'm doing. I am doing the solicitor side of stuff. So I'm doing the corporate commercial, wills and estates, real estate, that kind of thing, the paperwork side of law. Somewhere within my network of 3,500 women across the country is someone who does everything else. So if you need a litigator, then that's somebody else within my network. If you need an educator, that's somebody else within my network. If you need, the guidance of a writing expert who is, a master at preparing pleadings and affidavits, that sort of thing. There's somebody within my network that does that. So I'm the hub that connects everyone to everyone else, is the enterprise stuff that I'm doing. On my own, I'm also trying to develop the background practice materials that makes it easier for solos and smalls to start up and stay in business and not run afoul of the various regulatory regimes that govern our profession. So I'm doing some tech development stuff in the background as well. I'm doing some public legal education stuff in the background as well. So lots of social enterprise things happening in the background. But at the front end, I'm mostly practicing law in a corporate commercial setting. So I've put my LinkedIn location in the chat box. If others want to connect, they can put their LinkedIn coordinates there as well, and I will connect to you on that front as well. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mina. Yeah, I'm seeing the chat is kind of full with everybody's LinkedIn link. So thank you so much. This is so great. Anybody else wanted to introduce themselves before we move on? You can raise your hand or just come off of mute.
So I will be on shortly, but right now, I'm just getting organized. But my name is Marian Paul, and I have a company called CanWCC Consulting. And what we do is we offer blanket exercises. And with some of the fees for the blanket exercises, we offer Indigenous parenting workshops so that we can get children who are in the foster system back home into their communities and back in with their parents. In Manitoba, where I live, there is over 11,000 children in the foster system. 90% of them are Indigenous, and CanWCC wants to lower some of those numbers. So that's what I do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marian. She was actually one of our pitch finalists in a pitch competition we did in Winnipeg earlier this year. So it's nice to see you today.
Oh, yeah, you too.
Awesome. I will pass it over to Nasim.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Nasim, and I'm wearing two hats in entrepreneurship. I'm running Into Charge, which is a licensed electrical contractor and consultant, mainly doing EV charging stations, batteries, and solar panels in the GTA and Ontario. The other hat is in personal finances. That is true. Like Canada, we do run free sessions because that's the gap in the middle class families, mainly personal finances. Those are free and no obligation, so feel free to message me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Nicola.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicola Claxton. I'm founder and CEO of a financial technology company called Emoot. It's a gifting web app where people can share a genuine and heartfelt virtual greeting card alongside.
Sorry, Nicola, I can almost not hear you.
Oh, sorry about that.
You're really, really quiet.
It's sounding okay on my end.
I have a quiet voice.
Okay.
I'll speak up. Yeah, I'll speak up. How's that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's better.
Yeah, good. Thanks for letting me know. My name is Nicola Claxton, founder and CEO of a financial technology company called Emoot. We're a web app that helps people create genuine connections through creating a virtual greeting card to send alongside a cash e-transfer. So we're replacing plastic gift cards, merchant gift cards, and helping people with social connection and financial well-being. And we're launching this fall. Really nice to be part of this group.
Thank you so much. I think that's everybody that wanted to introduce themselves on camera. So thank you so much, everybody. I think I also just realized that I kind of skipped over the other sections for today's session. So let me just go back a little bit and speak a little bit more about that. So in a moment, I'll introduce our speakers for today, and then we'll go into some expert talks from two of our entrepreneur speakers. This will be about 3 to 5 minutes each from the two guest speakers, and then we'll have a panel discussion with two more guest speakers, as well as our moderator, Isabel, who introduced herself just now. So the panel discussion will be about an hour, and then our final segment will be some breakout rooms. So we'll be placing about 3 to 4 people in a breakout room. We'll do about 3 rounds for 10 minutes, so 30 minutes in total. And this is really an opportunity for you to network with each other. We can also give you like a question to act as an icebreaker when we head into the breakout rooms later. But you're definitely free to use this time as you'd like. And we really encourage you to stick around for this segment because you never know what can come from a conversation. Okay. I think we're good to introduce our speakers for the day. So after the expert talks that we're about to hear, you can definitely we definitely encourage you to ask questions to the speakers either through the chat, or you can also raise your hand and we'll get you to ask your question on microphone. But without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speakers for today. So maybe when I say your name, you can quickly wave to us. So we have Ayako Ghallager, who is the founder and CEO of Lost to Love, Lucrezia Spagnolo, who is the founder and CEO of VESTA, Janaki Hadida, who is the partnership lead at Coralus, as well as MJ Ryan, who is the venture development guide for Coralus. So we'll get started with our expert talks, and I'll invite Ayako to kick things off and tell us her story. I think you were just on mute, sorry.
Sorry, thank you. Hi. My name is Ayako. My pronouns are she, her, and perhaps I'll start with just introducing myself first. So I live on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Kwantlen, and Tsawwassen nations, as well as other Coast Salish nations, what is now known as Richmond, BC, so just south of Vancouver. And I've spent my life sort of in activism work, with direct nonviolent action. I founded a nonprofit before, which I was not paid for. It was all voluntary, but that was helping uplift community in Kingston, Jamaica, that's situated around the city garbage dump. And then in 2020, I injured a traumatic stillbirth, early stillbirth of my daughter, Emmy. And so since then, it sort of completely shifted the trajectory of my life, and I've been focusing more on grief work. So building a community first through Instagram, and then becoming a grief coach, and then founding Lost to Love app, which is a mobile app, the first of its kind that provides comprehensive support for parents grieving pregnancy and infant loss, and TFMR, which is termination for medical reasons. And so activism and grief work really is so similar because it really relies on, grit, resiliency, the tenacity, really leaning into community, and just a big commitment to healing and justice and how I want to see the world. So I launched Lost to Love just in January, and I did it not with too much market research. I know someone does market research here. I was like, oh, I probably should have used you. But I knew that there was a need in the community. So I launched, and, I'm iterating as I go. But so far we've had over 800 downloads with 100% 5-star reviews in both Apple and Google app stores. So what we do is we have a free and VIP paid tier memberships, and that offers in-app chat rooms for everyone in the free section, also a digital resource library, free, and then a more enhanced one with more resources in the VIP section. Also all the free virtual events every month, and the workshop archive is in the paid section. It is, just so people know, we charge $24 US a month for month to month, or it goes down to $14 a month US if they do it annually. I wanted to make it very, as barrier-free as possible, because I'm doing this from a standpoint of ethical commerce and not trying to make money off of people's grief, but providing that support. So we take them through right from that moment of loss, whether they're miscarrying at home, in the hospital, or they just received a diagnosis that may mean they have to terminate the pregnancy, and then all the way through their life experiences that they endure after loss, parenting, pregnancy after loss, infertility, and so on. And just quickly, just because I always like to talk about my daughter, Emiko, she was born just under 19 weeks. And she had actually died inside of me about a month prior. And I had not kind of known, but not really, and was really dismissed by a lot of the medical professionals. But I think I'm really grateful that I had that extra month with her. And it was right at the beginning of COVID. And I remember, sitting on my phone after they said, just come back to the hospital tomorrow and we can induce labor and you can birth her then because she's already dead. Just go home and have a good night's rest. And I was like, did I, after I drove myself home, do you think I had a good night's rest? Like, no, of course not. I was on my phone frantically searching for some sort of guidance, some sort of support, because I had no idea what I was getting into. And there was really nothing. There was not a single app when I looked in the App Store, and everything on the internet was really fragmented and inconsistent. So, 4 years later, there was still really nothing on the App Store. So this is why I created it. So nobody has to feel as alone as I did. So thank you so much for letting me be here. And I think I'm going to be learning just as much as everyone else. And I am looking forward to meeting all of you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Ayako. That was really lovely, and always love to see that wanting to help out after something like that happens, and being there for others. That was so lovely. Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to Lucrezia now to share her story.
Thank you so much. My name is Lucrezia, and Ayako. That was just riveting, and I'm just honored to know you and to meet you today. So hard act to follow. And so, like I said, my name is Lucrezia, and I'm the founder of VESTA Social Innovation Technologies. We're based in the city of Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, and the Chippewa, and is now also home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So I started VESTA. I actually called VESTA my second career, if you will. VESTA is a social enterprise, so where I talk about it, it's and we're on a mission to end rape culture. And what we do is we want to harness the power of both community and technology to lower barriers to reporting sexual and gender-based violence, as well as equalizing and increasing access to resources. And so a little bit of background about me is that, like I said, I kind of see VESTA as my second career. I actually worked in financial services for many, many years, and had a very successful career, was living abroad, had worked in Canada, US, and then had moved to Europe. And when I came back from Europe, I actually found myself in a transition period where I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do next. And I thought I was going to do something in fintech, to be quite honest. I came with a really successful career in financial services. I had been the manager and the country head of a foreign subsidiary of one of the largest, most international companies in the world. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do something in fintech. And I got involved into kind of a little bit the startup space, trying to see what was happening in Toronto. And what I realized is some of the feedback that I kept getting over and over again was do something you're passionate about. And I was spending my days, and I honestly thought, I come from, I should also mention, an entrepreneurial family. My father was an entrepreneur, an immigrant to Canada, and I had lived the entrepreneurial journey as the daughter of, and so I knew what the ups and downs of an entrepreneurial life looked like, and the inconsistency, and in my young life felt very inconsistency, really high highs and really low lows. And I wanted something stable. And so I thought I needed to go into corporate and have this corporate career. So I never once considered entrepreneurialism. But when I came back to Canada, and my father had planted the seed in my head, and he had said to me, if you're working this hard for somebody else, you should be working for yourself. And that was the first time that little seed kind of got planted in my head. And I came back to Canada, and I was looking to do something, and I thought, you know what, again, didn't think about it for myself. I'm going to go work for someone else. I want to see what's happening in the fintech space. I liked when I was working for a smaller company. And I honestly thought that every entrepreneur, because, I watched TV and the movies, and I thought entrepreneurs were just incredibly brilliant people that had, and honestly, I had this vision of a young man, that started up a tech business, and he was a computer programmer in his garage. And, they built these phenomenal, fantastic, world-changing events and things. So I started meeting some entrepreneurs and started noticing that actually they weren't quite as brilliant as I thought they were going to be. And I also realized I didn't want to be in fintech anymore. And I started to realize that we were then I was looking at what did I want to do? What did I want to bring into the world? And I realized I didn't care about financial services anymore. And the one thing I couldn't get out of my head was, this is around, to give you an idea, about 2016, 2000. And so the public discourse that was happening in Canada, the United States at that time, I couldn't believe how prevalent rape culture was. If you would recall, funny enough, we're in a similar situation now in 2020, what's happening in the United States, was I couldn't believe this political discourse and how there was the sexual predator, and there was Bill Cosby coming in and out of the news. Here there was John Gomeshi happening in Canada, and my brain just exploded. And I thought, why isn't anybody doing something to address rape culture? And so I launched VESTA. And I did it honestly with a run-on sentence, and I applied to an incubator program, or rather an ideation program. I didn't know what that meant at the time. And fast forward to 5 years later, we took quite a bit of time, but VESTA, we launched what I call it a promising practice. We called it the first of its kind web application that allows individuals to, from one place that have experienced any kind of gender-based violence, to document their experience, connect with local in-person supports or online supports, all in one place. And if they'd like to report to law enforcement, either anonymously or actually launch an investigation. We partner with local sexual assault centers and police services so that then those individuals that do then want to connect with those services can connect with them in a soft, if you will, introduction, because it flips the switch and allows then police or the centers to come to them and connect with them on their time and how they'd like to be connected. So that's kind of like a quick intro of VESTA and myself.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lucrezia. Again, just such powerful stories today. And thank you both so much for opening up and telling your stories and sharing with everybody. That was very lovely. Okay, so I think we are ready to start our panel discussion for the day. So again, just a reminder for those that feel comfortable, we invite you to stay on camera for this portion and really engage with the speakers. Feel free to raise your hand to ask a question, and we'll call you when we're ready. Or you can also ask some questions in the chat as well. And I will now pass it over to our wonderful moderator, Isabel Nolan, who is the Director of Programs at Startup Canada, to kick off the discussion.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Miriam. Hi, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. Thank you all so much for those who came on camera and introduced themselves, or if you did it in the chat as well. I know a few people aren't able to put their cameras on, their microphones on, but it gives us such a great sense of who is in the room so that we can best serve you and ensure that you're getting what you need out of today's discussion. And before I go any further, I would like to say that I'm located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, also known as Vancouver. And also, I've been doing this now for 3.5 years, and it never ceases to amaze me the stories behind the businesses from all the entrepreneurs that I meet through this program specifically. So thank you to Ayako and Lucrezia, and to everyone here that's here today that's serving people at the end of the day. I think it's a fantastic thing. So we've met Ayako, we've met Lucrezia, and we have two other speakers here today, Janaki and MJ, and they're both from Coralus, and really wanted to bring them on today to share the work that they do within this space and how they're supporting and serving entrepreneurs that are working within these social impact, social enterprises. So Janaki, MJ, I'll pass it over to you to tell us about Coralus.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Isabel. Hi, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here with you all, to learn from you. Thank you so much, Ayako and Lucrezia, for sharing your stories and what you are currently building and doing. So my name is Janaki Hadida. I use pronouns she, her. I'm calling in today from the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe people just outside of Bancroft, Ontario. I move a lot between Toronto and Montreal, and I know from LinkedIn, some of you folks are also in those areas already. So hopefully we get a chance to connect in real life. So I am part of the Coralus team. I lead all things partnerships and community co-created events, and have been on the team for about 6 years now, which is really a testament to the community and how expansive it is for everybody who's here. So how many folks are already familiar with Coralus? I see Monica, who's involved in the community. MJ, anybody else? Nicola, maybe a little bit. Awesome. So we used to be called SheEO, if that rings a bell for anybody. Now Coralus started about 9 years ago as a community for women and non-binary folks, to be able to gift financial capital alongside other different forms of capital or resources that they really felt like they had in abundance. So like your networks, your connections, your lived experience, your emotional support, knowledge, ideas, feedback, and so on. And we freely share them among everybody here, sharing our gifts together so that we can really all nourish each other's businesses and dreams, so we can all grow and thrive together in community. And since we started 9 years ago, we've grown to about 7,000 people around the world, all from different backgrounds, from different sectors, stages, ages, lived experiences across 5 different countries. So we started in Canada and we're from coast to coast, but we're also in the US and the UK, Australia, where our founder, Vicky Saunders, right now is doing a big tour, New Zealand, and we just recently announced that we're going global. So we have got now people from Dubai and South Africa and Berlin and all around the world who are joining, which makes it a really great community to travel with and to meet people as you move around in the world. So there's a huge diversity of who's here, as I mentioned. And in terms of entrepreneurship, there's people who are very early stage, who have an idea. There are people, that are in financial institutions, a lot of lawyers. So Nima, really excited to learn more about the work that you're doing because we get asked a lot, can you connect me with a lawyer who insert? So delighted to hear about your network and offerings. There are artists and architects and really just everything in between. So really just this abundance of knowledge and experience for us to be able to draw from. And then the thing that really unites all of us is that everybody here is what we say radically generous. And so there's this value set that folks are showing up with of this desire that I know all of you also have, being social entrepreneurs, of wanting to create a better world and really wanting to solve a problem that's touching you and is touching your communities. And so it's, as you show up, you'll find that people are like, who are you? What are you doing? How can I help? And it's very, very heart-centered. So it has a little bit of a different flavor and allows people to, feel a sense of community and remove themselves out of isolation in whatever it is that they're currently building and dreaming up. So we every year we loan out capital at 0% interest to entrepreneurs who have new business models and new ideas that are really transforming the systems and sectors that we're all participating in through what we call our venture program. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But ventures are selected to receive this capital as a 0% interest loan by our community. So it is a venture created program for ventures that's governed by the community. So very, very different. There's no panel of experts. Everybody in the community participate in the process of deciding who we're excited about, who we want to see supported, who can we learn from, who's showing new pathways and possibilities across all these different sectors, from healthcare, manufacturing, agriculture, and so many other sectors or something from all different spaces. So I'll probably leave it at that for now and talk a little bit more afterwards, but really invite everybody who's here to be able to step into the community, regardless of whatever stage you're at. I know Monica joined, I want to say it was 6 months ago, Monica, something like that. And regardless of where you're at, the idea is that it is way more fun and more interesting and more joyful to be able to build a business together in community and in relationship with other folks, where you can access, the brilliance of all these different people who are here on a daily basis. And so we have got all kinds of tools and things, and I can talk more about that later. But thanks so much for having me, and I'll pass it over to MJ to share a little bit more.
Thanks, Janaki. Hi, I'm MJ Ryan. I use she, her pronouns, and I come to you today from traditional lands of the Coast Miwok people in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I live in that place. Unfortunately, that's causing a lot of trouble in the world right now, but I'm happy to be here to talk to you today about your businesses. I'm here because Janaki asked me to come and offer a perspective from someone who, first, I've been the development guide for Coralus for the last 9 years, meaning I am one of the 2 people who supports ventures when they are selected. And so I've worked with not only all the Coralus ventures that we have, but for the last 25 years or so, I've been a startup coach. I've worked with everyone from people who had just an idea in their house, all the way to companies that are now worth $500 million and everything in between. I've seen it all. I've helped people do it all. And before that, I was an entrepreneur. I started and ran a book publishing company in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I've been where you are. I've held another job while I was starting my business. The way I funded my business with my credit card, it's like, so I know I've been either part of or help support others who have been on every stage of this journey. So I'm really, really here to answer any questions, offer any resourcing that I might for you today. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Janaki and MJ, for both being here. And you probably saw my message in the chat. We have planned out some questions for our speakers, but I always think that it's a good sign that we hardly get to the questions that we've planned and that it's centered around our attendees' questions. So if you do have any questions for our speakers, you can use the raise hand function and ask on screen, or you can do it through the Q&A box. So speakers, I know I sent you like the flow of the conversation that we might do, but there was a question that came up in the chat, which is very similar to a question that we had planned. So if it's okay, I'd love to go straight into that question. And it's centered around balancing the social impact and also the financial stability of each of your businesses. So Ayako, Lucrezia, like, do you have any advice on how you navigated that balance, and any advice for entrepreneurs that are maybe struggling with this? Lucrezia, maybe I'll go to you first.
Sure. So, this one's a challenging one, and I think it's something that I don't think there's one right answer for any one person, at least from my perspective, is that I think when you start a social enterprise, like I said, I came from this very corporate background. I worked in financial services. At the end of every day, I went from even like having a sales background to then being in management. I knew at the end of every day how much money we made every day. And so it was very tangible from that corporate side to know it was plus minus, right? How much you came in, minus expensive, plus or minus, and you knew how well you were doing. When I moved into social entrepreneurship, I realized that there was going to be some trade-offs I had to make. And when I kind of looked at it, I thought there's so much advice, especially when you're starting an organization and you're starting not just a startup, but a social enterprise where you want to have impact. I think that it comes down to deciding what are the key priorities, what is your mission, what are your, what are you trying to accomplish? But at the same time, that's very idealistic, right? And because if the business can't survive and it doesn't make money, then you can't have an impact. So there's a story I like to share, actually, and it's not even one of mine, but I asked somebody if I could share theirs because I thought it was such a beautiful example of when you have to make some of these decisions. And so I know a social entrepreneur who started a business and for many, many years struggled hand to mouth, right? And there's certain days where you feel like you have to close your doors because you're not getting enough funding coming in the door and you're not selling enough product to kind of come in through the door. She was approached by, and she was making shoes actually out of recycled materials, specifically out of recycled tires. And she was actually approached by a large tire manufacturer that all of us would recognize the name. And to make the long story short is actually she decided to not go into partnership with them because she realized that the values and what they were looking for. Now, if she had partnered with them, she would not have had any more cash flow issues at all. The opportunity there was incredible, and it would have just saved her from any kind of cash flow issues. And but she decided not to, because she realized that their values weren't aligned, and what they were trying to do with the partnership and what they were looking for in terms of what her values were. And primarily the biggest driver there was that one of the key indicators for her was that she was looking at also employing locals that helped actually with some of the landfills and repurposing and finding the recycled plastics and materials that they needed to use. And if she went into partnership with them, that would go away, because that was one of the stipulations, is that they use their materials. And so she walked away from that opportunity. And that's something that at the time, it was very early when in my journey. And I'll be honest, that shocked me, because I thought, oh my goodness, I had seen her struggle. And I realized that it was just, I couldn't believe she had made that decision. And then I realized I came up to something very similar early on, is that I launched VESTA before Me Too happened. So I was told over and over again that the issue with non-reporting of sexual violence, and over 90% of people who experience sexual assault or gender-based violence don't report. I was told this was an education problem and an awareness problem. Then Me Too happened. I can't tell you how many people and how much advice I got into pivoting into what they said was, you know, no one really wants to talk about this, but you know, Me Too is happening. So I think you should pivot into the DEI space. Talk about inclusion, talk about belonging. That way people be more comfortable to use your system. So why don't you make it about reporting, you know, what they called softer items? And so I watched quite a few organizations go down that path, where they actually changed their vision and where they went. And I decided not to. Has it made my journey harder in certain ways? Probably. And so I don't know if I've got a complete answer for you, but, and I don't discount anyone that has changed and goes into a different direction, because I think there's a lot of different ways to get to your path and where you want to go. I knew that for me, making those changes would radically change what I was looking to do. I was looking at partnering with a large enterprise, but I realized that it was going to completely change what I set out to do. And I didn't follow that path either.
I want to jump in on something that Lucrezia said, just to make a point that's connected, which is that, notice she said, I got lots of advice. She said that 2 or 3 times. And that's because you probably have, and you probably will. Everyone has ideas of what you should be doing. My advice is to listen to yourself, trust yourself. Especially if this is something that you're really passionate about and knowledgeable about, you know better than anybody else. I just worked with one of our ventures in Canada that was selling themselves. Okay, they went into market, and they went to some fancy, you would know the name, people who do this for a quote living, and they had a failed process. And I said to them, why didn't you just do it? You know every single one of the people in the business that could possibly purchase you. And they said, well, we didn't think we knew. We didn't trust ourselves that we know the space. And when we saw the bank's list, it wasn't as good as the list we would have come up with. So now they're going to do it themselves, right? So in anything, in balancing impact versus viability, financial viability, trust yourself. Do what's right for you. Feel into what's true. And that comes out strongly in both Lucrezia and the other story about the tires. So.
No, excellent. Thank you so much, MJ. And I mean, I can't imagine how difficult, well, both your decision, but also the entrepreneur's story that you shared, to walk away from something that would have guaranteed like financial stability, but to have that belief and backbone within their business, to be like, no, it doesn't fit our goals and our can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but yeah, our values, that's what I'm trying to think of. So thank you so much for sharing that. Ayako, how about yourself? You know, I know that you have different tiers to how people can interact with your app. So how did you go about that? I'm sure that you approach it with some sensitivity as well, not wanting these parents that are going through such grief to be paying such high amounts. So how did you navigate that piece as well?
Yeah, yeah, and thanks, MJ. I love the point that like we are like you are the expert. Like you are the only person in the world that speaks the way you do, that knows your, you know, that has your lived experience, and really like honoring and leveraging that because you may be in a market that has, you know, you're not the only person in baby loss, right? But you're the only one that has your lived experience, and different people can will be attracted to you versus others. Like for me, I'm it's a very white-centered leadership role in many pregnancy loss organizations, and I'm one of the only ones that is a visible minority. So I try to really honor that and honor marginalized voices and make it very inclusive. So as for my app, yes, I wanted to make sure it was a no-brainer for me that no one should have to pay for the type of information when they're in that acute initial grief and trauma of like, what should they do when they're miscarrying? So that will always be free. I'll never take that away, because you're not gonna, when you're in that state, like you can't be thinking about, should I, you know, where's my credit card? It's like, oh my God, I'm bleeding on the floor, right? So that was always like a no-brainer for me. But if they, so what I try to do is bring people into my the free club with those initial resources, which with some workshop recordings, little teasers of what the VIP club has. And then if they feel like it resonates with them, then they can try. I still have a 30-day free month trial for the VIP club. So people can try it out for a whole month, go to all the workshops they want to. And if something resonates, then people will see like one workshop, you know, is cheaper than, you know, going to a yoga class, and you can get like 10 different workshops. I think, you know, the biggest barrier for me, going back to that question of like, how do you pay the bills, doing the good that you want to do in the world, and monetizing it. For me, it's, I'm the only app, like for-profit app, but there are lots of charitable organizations that are giving out, you know, limited resources and support for free. So a lot of people in my community, they want everything for free. So it's a lot of me having to educate and empower people to realize that they deserve the extra care, and that, you know, we will pay, like the app costs the same as like 3 Starbucks coffees for a month, you know, $14 a month. Yet the first thing that people usually drop if they're budgeting is like those self-care type of things. So a lot of educating the community the value of your service or product. And I think, sorry, I wrote down a couple things. You know, one, it's a sacrifice for sure. I'm not going to beat around the bush, right? I'm still in that startup phase or leveraging phase. And I think clear communication with your family or your partner, if you can, you know, take those sacrifices. Can you go into debt for the first year or a few years? Can you lean into family and friends funding or non-dilutive loans? And then you need to question, you know, venture capital. If you don't want to go personally into debt, like also be careful about losing equity from venture capitalists. And really clearly working out your expected projections. Like how long will it take to regain all the startup costs? And I don't think I was very clear on my projections. So, you know, like I'm still, you know, of course, like iterating as I go, and that's okay, but I knew it was going to be a sacrifice. So with that also, I invite people to like, don't stop the side hustles too, right? You know, for me, it's like, you know, lean on that one-on-one coaching or the consulting. You have so many skills that you can pepper around all over the place that people still need your value through. So The last thing I wanted to say is look at other ways you can deliver your product. You know, if you're having a hard time monetizing, you know, I was looking just at B2C, like selling directly to the consumers, the people buying my app. But what I really am now shifting into is the B2B2C. So selling my app to these organizations that are providing free service. But I mean, to them, those services, they still have to pay for their support groups, their therapists and all that stuff. So now I have, you know, I've already have a charity that has sponsored their clients to use my services because they see like, oh my gosh, we don't have to train people. We don't have to create our own support groups. We don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. And it's cheaper for them to use me and contract me to do it. So really looking into different ways you can deliver your service or product. That's it. Hopefully that was okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, they were great points of advice, Ayako. Thank you so much for sharing. Janaki, can I also sort of go to you with a similar question, but in addition to that, you know, monetization of these types of businesses, what other challenges are you seeing entrepreneurs within this space facing? And what are the types of support that Coralus is doing to kind of mitigate these challenges?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I would say, I mean, first of all, we see so many people that are just doing a lot of things alone, and thinking that they need to do absolutely everything. And so MJ has actually taught a lot of us in community to really get clear on what it is that you're good at. What's your like special sauce? What's your superpowers? The things that really come to you easily. And then sourcing from people around you, the things that you might not be. And obviously, depending on different stages and you know, money and whatnot, it might be more difficult or not, or more accessible or not. But one of the things that we offer in the community is really that muscle building of asking for help. And so being able to come, you know, we use Slack, we use all these different, we've got, you know, gatherings where people will literally sit around and each person will share what it is that they're looking for support with, and someone else will offer that. We gather together in what we call pods, which are small groups. We just launched it in September of people getting together monthly for 90 minutes with about 5 to 8 people around, you know, an idea or a topic or a sector that is something that they really all want to collectively work on. And so we have over 90 different groups from all around the world that the community has said, this is what matters to me. I want to talk about this. I know Kashana's on the call right now from Women in Data Science. She's leading one that's about AI and our intersections. I think Monica's in one related to marketing. And so there's all these different pods, and people are able to come together in this very, you know, like sacred space of being able to grow their business together in community and also find the skills and support that they might need from somebody else who can do it a lot better than they might be able to. So that's a really big thing. It's like not feeling like you need to do everything, not feeling like you need to be, I think you said, Lucrezia, like, you know, the guy that's doing everything by himself in his basement in a hoodie and never asked anybody for help, that like imaginary human. But that we can all really do this in community and also get feedback from each other, you know? And so when we can see someone say like, wow, when you show up, when I see you in your zone of genius, you are like, you're shining so much, you're so articulate, you're so clear, this is what I think, you do so well. And to also be able to just receive that feedback of how people see you, I think just really creates this beautiful energy, this incredible fabric of people in community, and we can just go a lot further together. So I think like from a challenge perspective, it's being in isolation, thinking you need to do everything alone. And what to do is like get in community and ask for support and also offer what your gifts are and what your superpowers are, so that it can just flow with a lot more ease. And MJ, I'll flip it to you if there's anything else that you want to add on top of that.
I guess the only other thing I really want to add is I think people have a lot of ideas We've been, Lucrezia was talking about this. We've been sold that what an entrepreneur is supposed to be like, what a startup is supposed to do, the hockey stick growth and all of that. And I think that those of us who want to have impact in the world need to really understand what kind of impact do we really want to have. This goes to values and what the choices you're going to be making and stuff. And that system that they're telling that we have the fantasy about, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world and the, that system doesn't actually work. Except for those 5 people who have the billions of dollars to sign up to a different kind of thinking. What is the impact that we really, really want to have? And I've been talking a lot to people about how do you scale deep instead of big? How do you make a business that's sustainable to yourself as well as to the purpose that you care about? Because if you're running around trying to grow at all costs, that's what cancer is. Uncontrolled growth, right? So I would really encourage you to understand what actually does success look like for you. And what I've noticed with social entrepreneurs in particular is that because we care so much about the issue that we're working on, we have this idea that we have to be bigger, bigger, bigger. And the happiest people and the most successful in terms of impact people that I have seen in the 300 so startups that I've been with is those who decide, I'm just doing this little thing. And it helps, not only does it do good in the world, but I can manage it in my particular family situation. And I'm not stressing myself or my resources too much. So I encourage you to really think about that.
Thank you so much for that sentiment. I love that thought of growing deep or scaling deep rather. I think that's so apt for this space of these types of businesses, and for sure it's how are you measuring your success? What is success to you? Obviously, of course, if you want to be able to pay your bills and keep things running, but what is the impact that you're trying to leave? And I think that kind of leads into my next question pretty well. So thank you so much, MJ, for that transition. But for Lucrezia and Ayako, can we talk a little bit about kind of measuring what that impact is for each of your businesses? So how are you measuring the impact that your business is having on the community? Are there any strategies that you've employed to measure this impact? Lucrezia, I'll ask you first.
Sure, and that really resonates with me. I brought up the report because I really want to read this, like scaling deep, because that really resonates with me, especially what MJ just said about there's this idea about scaling and big, right? And so going to Isabel, your question about how do you scale the impact or how do you measure the impact you're making? And I have to admit that, one thing that I was able to do was in 2019, I was able to secure a significant amount of funding to actually pilot VESTA in somewhere. And so we piloted in Kingston, Ontario. I got the Kingston police to come together with the Sexual Assault Center. And we had an agreement. And for the next, over 3 years, we were going to pilot this in this one area. And I really struggled because it was like, okay, we got the pilot and that I thought was this big, massive milestone. And I was super excited about it. And then for the next 3 years, it was just really a challenge because things come up. And yes, the app is working. And first it was like, oh, are people going to use it? It's like, oh my goodness, they did. And so our research before, and I did about 3 or 4 years of research before we actually launched the app. And the research said we were going to have 100 anonymous reports before we got our first report that said report to the police. That actually didn't happen. Within 10 days, we got our first report to police. So it was like, oh my God, people are going to trust this app. Holy moly, this is actually going to work. So then though, for the next few years, I was really looking at, you know, how many people are we helping? I need to get bigger. We need to scale. We need to get more. How many people are engaged? You know, I got very much into my head about what was the number, what was the quantitative like number, and not, I kind of lost sight a little bit of the qualitative, and I kept going back and forth. So I think part of it is, first of all, when you're trying to figure out is what's the impact you're trying to make, and understand, even though in theory, I understood. I had it written down on paper. I had it all structured in a format. I had what I called a results measurement plan. So if anybody's ever looked at a theory of change or a results measurement framework, I had that all planned out. I worked with, you know, an external evaluator who helped me understand that and structure that for my business. But what I did on paper and what was in my head were two different things. And that was really hard for me to reconcile the two. So when I look at how do we quantify and measure the impact we're having, I have to reconcile those two things, because yes, we have an app. So we're able to collect quite a bit of metrics on that. And in fact, we got better at collecting metrics and understanding how individuals are accessing it. We're also able to track how individuals are accessing our resources. And so I can see what those numbers are, and I can see the progress, and I can see where individuals are interacting. So I can come down at the end of the day and give pretty exact numbers. But what I was more interested in was also the qualitative part, right? Well, what kind of real impact are we having? Not just are people touching it. I didn't want it to just be vanity and saying, well, this many people, oh, we had 24,000 people hit this site, or whatever that number was I really wanted to get into the stories and understand the qualitative impact. So not just directly to survivors, but I was really looking at, can we make a change within the community we're working in? Really wanted to create something that was collaborative. So it was like, would they show up to weekly meetings? Would they collaborate? What was the impact that was happening on the relationship? Not just that our partners had relationships with us, but what were the relationships they had with each other? And so I found that I put all these systems in place to track the numbers, but I realized that I also needed to reconcile what was that story? Were we actually having an impact? Where are the challenges? Are we actually lowering barriers? And have conversations with individuals and try to track that and write that down. And then it was about internalizing it as well for myself and saying, okay, what people are saying or what people are doing might be different than what you thought, but is it a failure or is it a success that now you know what the gaps are? So I don't know if that's really a complete answer, but it's a work in progress, and it's a mix of both, looking at the numbers and understanding both from a qualitative and quantitative perspective.
Absolutely. No, I think that's the qualitative versus quantitative is incredibly valid point. And I think it's so useful then to help inform what you do, you know, being able to know what those gaps are, and knowing how to steer the ship of your business into the right direction. Ayako, how about yourself in terms of that qualitative versus quantitative impact? And I saw your comment there, so I'd love to, if you wanted to share a little bit more on that.
My comment on
in the chat, yeah, like what does success look like for you? I'd rather crash.
I'd rather crash and burn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I love that what MJ said. It's, you know, what does success look to you? Like, how much are you willing to like really like live and grind in your dream? Yeah, I love that. I'd rather like try this out, get into a bunch of debt, have to close it down, and then work off that debt. But like, I knew that I tried my best. So yeah, and then asking about this qualitative and quantitative. Yeah, so with the app, we're always asking for feedback. We're always trying to empower our community to know that they are a part of this, as you know, because they know it's a new app. Also, so making them feel like they have the ability to change things. You know, somebody's like, oh, I want to try, you know, I don't know, some like grief movement. Sure, I'll find a grief movement professional and we'll add it on. Like, let's try it out, because also with mine, you know, grief is so unique in how what I think, what I would need is so different than what others would need. So we're really trying to keep it as broad and inclusive. But yeah, so constantly checking in with your clients, like making it personal, like sending like the personal email follow-ups. Like we have a survey after every single workshop and every single support group that pops up from Zoom. You can create those in Zoom. And we also have analytics of the user app movement, what they're opening, what they're spending time on. So that's super helpful. But I think the most important thing is making those personal connections, making them feel like their voices are heard. What they need is important to us. And it's so cool to be like my own boss and have like a very small team that I can just like, it's not a big ship. I can just like whoop and like change direction. So being very gracious with yourself in not knowing it right away and maybe not getting it, and then having people, you know, lovingly tell you like, actually, this is what we need, and iterating it and trying something new or shifting it. Yeah, your community and your clients are the best source of how to grow your business.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think, yeah, really great advice from both of you there on measuring what the impact is, or defining what that success and what that impact is, and how it's informing the future of your business. Lucrezia, I saw you made a comment earlier in the chat that you I think you said something like you rely heavily on or lean heavily on non-dilutive funding, and I'm sure that there's a few people in the room here would love to know what type of funding was that? Was it specific grants that you went out to or rather went after?
Yes, so to date I've gotten somewhere between 1.3 and 1.4 million in non-dilutive funding. So I've really leaned heavily into it. And to be quite honest, I kind of stumbled in because of one of the barriers I faced early on. So I really wanted to build something. I knew I wanted to use technology. And I thought technology is ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it's permeated every aspect of our lives. It's also permeated, you know, this sector. And so why are we not leveraging it to the best of our ability? And I kept hearing over and over again that, first of all, technology had no space here. This was a human problem with a human solution. And the other thing was that, so I started to do research. And what I found really interesting was that there was, I guess I'll call them like incumbents, or let's say organizations and individuals that were in this sector for many, many years. And I was coming at it from an outsider. And what really I was not prepared for was to be challenged on my research. And I literally was in meetings and someone's like, well, who's doing your research for you? It was like, well, I have a degree in political science. I went to McGill. I had a university degree. I'd been doing a lot of work in the background, but I thought it was really interesting that I got pushed back a lot on this research that I was doing. And so I really then started leaning into it and said, okay, well, how can I do real research? Because then again, I saw there was something in the chat also about like imposter syndrome, right? And it really fed into my insecurities about like, oh, maybe they're right. Like, who am I? You know, I come from financial services. What do I know about gender-based violence? Forget about my own personal experiences. They didn't count, right? And so I really leaned into anything and everything I can find. And with that said, I also looked for massive grants. I did look at small organizations, and I looked at, you know, $5,000 here and $10,000 there, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to swing for the fences, because what's the worst thing? I've already been told this isn't a viable product. This is never going to work. There's no space for technology here. I've been hearing all the no's possible. So I thought, I'm going to start looking into, and I looked for grants. I looked for government grants. Specifically, I looked for federal grants. So specifically non-dilutive grants. I leaned into the R&D portion of what it is we were doing, right? Because it is all research and development. And so I started looking into something that could align with our government priorities, And whenever they were looking for something different, so I actually called VESTA our promising practice because that was the language that was being used in the sector. I went towards, at the time, the department was called Status of Women Canada, it became Gender and Equality Canada. I leaned in heavily into some of their programs and I kept applying to their programs, the ones that we qualified for. And I pitched this idea about building out the R&D and looking at it and looking at technology and how could it help improve some of the existing protocols that were already in place. So I did my research into what protocols were already in place, what had they funded before, how could I see it as an evolution of existing protocols that they themselves had funded, and how do we do it that way? I also talked to any of the organizations I was with. So I was part of incubators and accelerators. And anytime they had someone come talk to us from the different programs, whether it was like MyTax that does, again, R&D, IRAP, I leaned very heavily into IRAP. I made a very, very good friends with my IRAP ITA. And sometimes I still say, I'm still here today because my IRAP ITA, sometimes I think she believes in me more than I believe in myself. And I'm honest with the struggles we're having. And I go to them and I go to the contacts I have, and like with Women and Gender Equality Canada, I mean, I formed relationships with my program officers. I knew about their kids. Like, it was about making sure that they understand the challenges I was having. And so they would let me know about opportunities that would come up. And then I just applied over and over again.
Incredible. I'm staggering amount of non-dilutive funding is incredible. Wow. But a lot of hard work, I'm sure. Sarah, yes, you have your hand up.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I joined a little bit late, but I really appreciate following along. I'm pre-launch social enterprise, co-working, and community hub in small town Ontario, and wanted to join along. But I also historically operate as a grant consultant. I've been working in this space for like 10 years. So really appreciate hearing, Lucrezia, about your persistence and how you went about it. One question I have for you as a follow-up, and hopefully this doesn't take us off track a bit, but you mentioned that your ITA is a woman. And I'm curious, do you think that if your ITA was not a woman, would you have had the same support from them?
So my first ITA was a man. And I had a good relationship with him. And I have to say, he was a champion for me in so much that he knew what he did not know. He believed in what I was doing. And he was more of a problem solver for me at the beginning, as opposed to, because that was one thing that IRAP, I think, not to veer too much off topic here, but one of the reasons I also lean heavily, let's say, into the IRAP program is because your ITAs aren't just about funding, and it's not just about money, it's about the network they have. And so he was excellent, and I honestly didn't qualify for a lot of the funding. And so through him, I didn't get the money right off the bat, but I had his support and I had his connections, and he kept making those connections. When he had to move on, though, what he did for me, and I didn't realize it till after he moved on to another territory, is he said to me, I'm transitioning you, I'm leaving, and I'm transitioning to you to this other person. And I fought hard for you to be in her portfolio.
That's great.
And I didn't understand the value of that until I met her. And she has been one of my biggest absolute challenges. So sometimes people will surprise you. And Sarah, to be honest, I'm always happy. I'm just in another program right now. I got very excited that the coach I was assigned was a woman. I just find there's a shorthand with women that I can just jump in. We're already jumping into problem solving as opposed to me justifying why I'm still doing what I'm doing. And so, yes and no, it depends on the individual. And there is a shorthand with women, but my first one was a man.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Great question. And we're kind of getting to the point where, oh, MJ, yes, go ahead.
Well, I just want to make sure we name a couple other resources. So Lucrezia names wonderful funding organizations. I want to talk about a couple other options. If you have invoice, right? They buy something from you but you give them net 60, net 90, sometimes they ask for. And so you have to pay and hold this invoice all this time before you get the money. There are organizations that will loan you the money based on your invoice. Okay. So you get the money now, he has to charge, there's a charge. It used to be a very expensive charge, but recently there's been a whole new round of these organizations that exist that actually charge reasonably. So if you have any invoices, the one in Canada that our ventures are using is called Liquid Capital. So you check them out. Yes, you pay to get the money now, but you might rather have the money now. If any of you have an inventory business, so a product business where you're carrying all this stuff somewhere, that's money turned into whatever your product is, again, there are organizations that will loan you on your inventory because they know that they can get their money back because you have the power to sell it. So look at invoice financing and inventory financing if that applies for you. It's one of the best ways, that the non-dilutive ways to fund your business at this moment is what I've noticed.
There's also, to add to that, MJ, there's also organizations that will fund against government receivables. So like Lucrezia, if you get IRAP or if you get SHRED dollars or something like that, you can actually get a loan for that amount. And then you can use it throughout the year so that you're not waiting to get reimbursed. So there's like Bonsai Capital as an example, and there's a couple other ones in the market.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind adding Bonsai Capital, like the website into the chat, that's great. But MJ as well, thank you for sharing that. I wasn't familiar with Liquid Capital either. So I think we'll be adding that to our resource list for sure. We are just coming up to the time where we're going to go into our networking breakout rooms. But before I do that, I just want to make sure, is there anyone who had a question that they wanted to ask while we're all in this room together?
Yes, I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this will be the first time of me attending this, and you've talked so much about social enterprise. I just want to know what your definition is, to know if I'm even in the right space. Thank you.
Absolutely. Who would like to take on Fule's question on, your definition of a social entrepreneur?
I'm happy to share. An entrepreneur who's creating social or environmental impact. So they're creating a positive benefit in the world through the work that it is that they're doing. I shared a link underneath your question, Fule, of a post that our founder Vicky shared, which I really, really loved. She shared on LinkedIn, I think last week, was just really about entrepreneurs who are solving problems and demonstrating new possibilities in the world. And offering really new pathways for us in different, we say a lot, systems and structures that aren't working for us. So yeah, have a read of that if you have a minute. It's really great, and she has a beautiful book recommendation from a mindset perspective. But I would say, yeah, social impact, environmental impact,
which is equally for profit.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And if you've heard of, there's a lot of social entrepreneurs, of course, who are B corporations. If you've heard of B corporations, so they say triple bottom line. So people, they serve their people, planet, and profit.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Fule, I hope that answers.
Thank you. Sorry, I muted myself. Thank you very much for sharing.
No problem. Ayako, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, that was a great definition, Janaki. I think for me, it's also being a social entrepreneur is moving away from the capitalist mindset of creating this business only for profit and for my own personal gain. Sure, like I live in a capitalist society, I have to feed my family by making money and then buying products, however, giving that social impact back to the community, and also like moving away from this competitive colonial mindset of profiting over people. So how am I building my business not in capitalism but in ethical commerce? How am I giving back in other ways? How am I running my business? I always say to people when I'm going into business or relations with them that, I am community over competition. I am collaboration over, any competition or capitalism as well. So I am trying to move away from, thinking it's me against the world. It's, it has to be me or the other charity, baby loss charities. I've had a lot of, gatekeeping. I've had a lot of baby loss charities. They're charities, they're nonprofits, and yet they're like withholding information they don't want to share. And I'm so not about that. Like I said before, like the way I speak, what I bring to baby loss is totally different than what another organization will. And, unfortunately for me, my market is very sustainable. There's always people having miscarriages. There's always people having the baby loss. So there's enough grievers for everyone. So it's moving away from that mindset of competition over collaboration.
Excellent sentiments. Thank you so much. Very eloquently put as well, Ayako. Thank you. Alrighty, so we are going to move into our networking breakout rooms. So